everyone. Today we have our another new episodes, and today's we're going to discuss about transhumanism, longevity research, and many interesting aspects. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Tom Ross, and Mr. Daniel. First, I would like to give chance, Mr. Tom Ross.
Yeah, well, today we're breaking from our format, our campaign series, a little bit because last week we had some people in the longevity community complaining about comments that Dan and I made in our town hall. They said my comments were worse. They said it looks like these candidates for the USTP aren't really enthusiastic about longevity. And then they pointed to a clip where I said, I didn't join the party to live longer. I don't necessarily want to live longer, but I do think that we need to focus on all kinds of other issues in tandem, with this stuff. And so we did a whole salon on Sunday dedicated to this idea, where a lot of us were joined in, and even the people that were originally complaining about our comments were there in the chat, and I've invited them on to the show here today. Hopefully they'll show up at some point. But again, the truth is I didn't join transhumanism because I want to live longer. That's not what drew me to it. What drew me to it, as I've said before, is a chance to read the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and that they had sections in there that helped me fight my cause, which is fighting child exploitation. That's what brought me into this, and that's why the reason I wrote the book US6 and all of this stuff. And longevity was just kind of a plus. Okay, these people want to live longer. Okay, that's cool. And that's actually the party's first core ideal, is using science and technology to live longer, to radical life extension. And for me, that's just a plus, but it wasn't really what drew me to this. I make the joke sometimes that, I can't really afford to live much longer, and so in that comedy, there's a lot of tragedy, because the reality is that we need to work on, our economic institutions, our health institutions, our entitlement solutions, in tandem with living longer. If we do live even just 20 years longer, that's going to affect a lot of things. It's going to affect pretty much everything. Younger people won't be able to work as much. There will be entitlement issues going on. So great, Ben's joining us. But yeah, so there's so many other aspects that we needed to take into account before we live longer. I mean, in tandem with wanting to live longer. And so that's what my opinion is. It's a very rational opinion. And we did a whole show on it, and I was able to express my ideas about what's important, what we need to take care of first before we live longer. And, that's really where I'm coming from. We can get into the details later, but that's my opening statement is this was all, we're breaking from our campaign series here because we need to address the fact that we do care about longevity as a party, as candidates, as a movement. That's really our core ideal. And although it's not what drew me to it, it's an important aspect. But also, whenever I talk about, even voluntary population control, or talk about ways to prepare to live longer, my friends list drops dramatically, or I get very vitriolic comments on these posts. And it's because I'm tapping into what most people fear most, which is death. And it ignites their kind of survival instinct. And if you're talking about population control or something that will keep them from living longer, they see me as a threat. But I'm really concentrating on really the rational stuff. I may not live long enough to live long enough, but I want to make sure that the people who do live long enough have institutions and entitlement programs and societal backup, so that they can live in a world that they want to live longer in. We've seen the suicide rate in America increase dramatically. And these are people that don't want radical life extension. They want radical life subtraction. And so we need to focus on that first. Why don't these people want to live longer? And if we do suddenly, now everyone can live, or older people can live 20 years longer, that suicide rate might increase even more, because if we haven't taken care of all of these institutional factors into account. And so that's how I approach this subject.
Excellent. Mr. Daniel, you know that World Talent Economy Forum, basically we are working with in the emerging economy. And this coming 31st August, we are working with American Embassy Bangladesh, University Grant Commissions, and we may train around 120 college students. I think it's a few million people. They're going to engage in our ecosystem. But my things is that how you want to clarify this transhumanism concept or longevity research uh, to our communities, how you want to interact with the community, how they get benefit through this transhumanism concept or this longevity research.
Yeah,
Mr.
that's what
Daniel.
Tom is talking about. I think we have to have a society that's compatible with super longevity, which is one of the three attractors or the three goals of the transhumanist movement. Super longevity, as Tom said, is the main one that seems to attract people. But we also have super intelligence and super happiness. So I think those three are a trifecta that you have to work on together. And you have to have a society that is compatible with the acceleration of all these three things. So I think how we get there is through decentralized science. Actually, I think we have lived a civilization that's been very unscientific. Things have been very done on the spur of the moment. It's like, oh, that looks good over there. I'm going to go kill that person and take his land and get his stuff. Or oh, I'm going to invent this and then sell it over here, and then it's causing all these knock-on effects that are not good for super longevity or super intelligence or super happiness. So I mean, people sometimes go, oh, transhumanism, they want a technocratic society. Well, and your point is, like you want a society based not on evidence. Like I think we tried that, and it's been a hugely bad experiment. It's caused immense disruption to the biosphere and immense disruption to people's quality of life. And this is really an integrated approach. It's a system of systems approach that I hope we can take. And I'm not just the vice president candidate, glad to be running with Tom Ross. Don't forget to vote on November 5th, 2024, Super Tuesday if you live in the U.S. Write us in if you're in a state that doesn't, really have a critical contest going on. I wouldn't want to be a spoiler party. But that's another thing we have to talk about is how not to have a society of spoilers where, one person's super happiness and super intelligence is spoiling another sector of those super longevity, happiness, intelligence. So I love what David, who comes on your program all the time, he is a system of systems solutions guy. It's like we've been using these point solutions. It's like, oh, put out this fire over here, No, we need to have a system of systems that prevents these little fires from popping up all over the place, metaphorically. And I think it's great, Dr. Sharif, you're working with the academic community, and I think the local academic community is something that there's not enough interaction with. I'm hoping to, I'm also, I was going to say, the newly minted director of community science, which is also known as citizen science, or I like the term decentralized science, or DSci. There's actually a wiki for DSci. And again, to plug what I think is a great portal into decentralized science, besides the Transhumanist Party, is the worldwide off-grid communication community. And you can see my call sign, extra class call sign is there. So there's actually a class you can take coming up pretty soon over Zoom to get your entry-level license. So what does this have to do with the Holy Grail, super longevity? Like I said, it's a system of system solution. We need to work on the super happiness, the super intelligence, and the super longevity, and do it in a system of systems way, and do it in a grid freedom kind of way, and a way that gets the community talking to each other. I'd like to see every block have like a decentralized science guy that can loan out tools and start experiments and ask the community what they want to do science on. Because it's better to have evidence to make your life better than to just not have evidence and do it randomly. So I'll pass the talking stick with those comments.
Excellent. Thank you,
Take it
Mr.
away.
Ben, for joining today's sessions. I just want to share some good I just want to share some good news because we are developing some business incubations in Bangladesh and in India, even in Pakistan, and we are heavily involved with the government, the World Bank, the university grant commissions, and youth has huge interest about modern science, engineering, and technology. Yes, I want to give thanks to all of my US friends because US Embassy also supporting these initiatives. We bring all of the big institutions, all of the big university in our ecosystem. So my objective, how we can motivate these youth communities with your longevity research, with the transhumanist philosophy. Uh, this part of the world, we have 2.5 billion people, and here 50 to 60% people actually youth. How youth get benefit from this party, from this philosophy? What is the transparent thing you want to share with our government, Mr. Ben?
Boy, if I guess I feel like, at least as far as the longevity piece is concerned, I feel like I am worried at my age that I won't quite see the benefits of health extension science as much as like my nieces and nephews might see. I feel like with me doing what I am now, for my generation, people are like, ah, man, that's a ways away yet. But I feel like the generation after, like they're going to be growing up in this world of, maybe we can do something about this. Whereas my generation, not near as much. And so I guess I feel like, at least for this longevity piece, I feel like this stands to benefit the youth maybe more than my generation. I'm a little jealous of them that I was born early-ish for maybe getting to take advantage of this. Um, as far as the other philosophy other aspects of the philosophy of transhumanism, I guess I do feel like with the internet kind of really coming to the population maybe in the 90s. I don't really think I was aware of anything besides email until about 2000, other than like Napster a little bit before. But I guess I feel like since then, the how much like smartphone technology has advanced. I guess, and then with COVID as well, there has been a fracturing of society that I think the transhumanist ideal does offer a good framework for how do we come back together again. I think part of the fracturing might be from the growing inequity. And so I wonder if that could be addressed, and then people start to see, okay, this system, this world system that we have isn't just for the benefit of the most wealthy. It is for all of us, but it does take a vast, not majority, but I'm going to say a significant percentage of people trusting that through working together, we can make the world as we want it to be, rather than I feel like it's very, we just feel like, just get what I got to get for me because I can't change the system at all. To have a little more confidence in that we are enabled to make the world we want it to be, even if we are one of billions. It's only through us all interacting and striving toward this ideal, toward this protopia of continuous improvement, that we can get there. And I think that the transhumanist ideals do offer a good framework for that.
So yeah, that's a
Thank you,
good
Mr.
point.
Jason.
that's a good point, Ben, about, the youth are going to be able to probably take advantage, of this new upcoming longevity science, probably better than, people our age, because, you know, but the regenerative medicine, I think, seems they're finding it harder than just like the slowing down of the aging and stuff. So it's probably going to be a while before we'll be able to be young again. You know, and which kind of makes me wonder, um, you know, when people start living longer, how are they going to act? I mean, it's like, uh, if will they go back into the workforce? You know what I mean? Will they decide to have more kids? You know, something just for you guys to think about. Maybe you could touch on, what would you do if you can live for 300 more years and be still young and not hurting and blah blah blah. Would you have more kids? Would you go back and do some kind of digging ditches job just because you can or something? I wonder what that's going to do to the economy. And because right now you know, people seem to be kind of worried about this population explosion. And from the data, I'm not entirely sure that that's a big problem, because I remember back, like in 1990, when I'm picturing 2000 rolling around, and I'm looking at the charts of the population growth, right? And it looks like it's going exponential. Okay. But then, recent data out of countries like China, in the last 30 years, uh, that growth hasn't been the same. Their one child policy, and then they also industrialized real fast, which brought their birth rate way down. Now the projections are they'll probably have less people than before. India has just overpassed them in population. You know, so I wonder if it's even really going to be a problem, because the data seems to say that when industrialized nations industrialize, their birth rate goes down. So that's yet to happen for a lot of these lower economic countries. Some of the ones in Africa. I imagine, if we're worried about birth control or population control, just give these developing nations technology and let them industrialize, and they'll probably just stop the population growth on their own. Now, granted, I'm not saying we should just take a completely hands off free market kind of approach. I'm just saying we should try to look at the data and see if it's really going to be as much of a problem as we think. Because I'm not so sure it's going to be. Like when I seen them charts when I was younger, and I was worried about population explosion, I was for sure. I was like, oh, 100% this is going to happen. So that's one thing that sticks in my head. I was for sure, and I was wrong, because it didn't happen. So follow the data would be my suggestion for us.
That's a good point. I've been, whenever I talk about voluntary population controls, again, my friends list drops immediately. But we're also seeing, that the species and the earth, or whatever the environment, is kind of taking care of that for us. I mean, there's a big problem with that. And the problem is at what cost? Everyone says, oh, well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to feed everybody. Technology will come in and we'll figure it out. But at what cost? The cost is the 100 species that we're making extinct every day because of our ravenous appetite for resources. So we're thinking anthropocentrically when we talk about, oh, we'll figure it out at some point. But that's just about the humans. We are, even if we find solutions to feed everybody, and again, at what cost? The cost is the biosphere is going away. So we're thinking very narrowly in that way. But also, I think what's happening is we're seeing the testosterone rates drop dramatically. I think it's even culturally, millennials are not wanting necessarily to have kids. And if they do it later, and it's very few kids. So something is happening in the collective conscience and the collective biology that is preparing us either to live longer or just preparing us to cut back a little bit. And, and again, a big part of this campaign is wanting to bring in young people. I call them digital dignitaries because they're the first digital native generation in human history. And the solutions that I have, having an analog childhood and a digital adulthood, don't necessarily mean much anymore. And so I want to bring more young people into this campaign. And when we're talking about, even if we only live 20 years longer, that will affect so many young people. And that's a massive group, the millennials and younger, even larger than the baby boomers. And so we need to prepare them for that. I may not, live longer. I may not enjoy the fruits of the fountain of youth, but that's okay. That's not why I'm in this. But just like the campaign is preparing, I have no delusions that I will walk into the White House in January 2025. I know my campaign manager says, yeah, I got to stop saying that. But that's the reality. And so this is more about clearing a path for younger, smarter digital natives to break down all these political paradigms that have never helped us, the divide and conquer aspects, the attention-seeking toddler politicians kind of thing. We need to get beyond that, and so we can make room for younger, smarter digital natives to take control. And I think that's kind of the overall role of Generation X anyway. We're a very small group of people. We're middle children of civilization. We've got the older siblings of the boomers and the younger siblings of the millennials and younger. And, I'm actually in real life, I'm a middle child. So I understand this being on the cusp. And so it's an as above, so below kind of correlation for me. And so I think it's really important that we are mediators, that this age group of mine is the mediator between both populations. And so it's really important that we bring young people in and we let them decide how if older people can now live 20 years longer, fewer younger people are going to be able to get jobs. They're going to be paying more into Social Security, and that might have to become privatized, God forbid, and so there's a lot of that going on right now. Gen X back in the 90s and earlier, there was a lead or leave movement of Gen Xers who realized that we weren't going to have Social Security when we hit we hit this age that we're coming up on now. So there was a lot of effort to tell Congress people to, either lead or leave, get something done about this now. And so anyway, but that's a big part of this campaign is understanding the needs of young people, bringing them into the decision-making process, because even if we live even 10 years longer, if we manage it, if longevity science comes in, and it's already happening, we're already seeing some great advances recently. We're going to have to work on all of these other ecological institutions at the same time to prepare them. And if I manage to live 20 years longer, I don't know what I'd want to do necessarily. I would probably spend my time helping younger people like I'm trying to do now, if there's a way to make money in that. But yeah, so it's really about why. I mean, if you want to live longer, you should be in a world that wants you to live longer, that is prepared for you to live longer. I use the analogy of a public pool where there's a time of day where the older people are allowed to swim in it, and then the young people can swim it at some point during the day. But the older people have decided, I'm just going to stay in here longer, and the younger people can't get in to swim in this pool. And that's kind of an analogy of what would happen with radical life extension, that even older people who may be more financially secure can afford to live longer, and so we need to figure out how to compromise between the swim times of both generations. And that's my approach to this. We have so many issues and so many infrastructure that we need to prepare for now, not just for living longer, but for the younger people who may be finding it harder and harder. And even with AI automation, people are finding it harder and harder to find work. And so there's all this stuff that's converging right now. But that's what humans do best. We adapt. We adapt to change, and we don't evolve unless we have to. And there's a lot taking us out of our comfort zone right now, and it's forcing us to adapt. It's forcing us to evolve, and the onus is on us to figure this out now, and not to think of it personally. Not to worry about, oh, will I live longer? Because when you're in that state of survival, you don't care who you're killing or who you're, if like the person is drowning and the person trying to save them, they'll bring them down with them, kind of thing. We can't be in that mode. We have to think ahead. And that's my point of view on this.
I could jump in on a comment with that, Tom. And I think the reason we are losing, we're in a mass extinction, like you said, the sixth mass extinction, 100 species a day. I think that's maybe a conservative estimate because we don't even know how many species are in the biosphere. We're probably losing ones we don't even know about at this point. But I think that's why we need what I would call transhumanist economics. We need a theory of property that says, look, if you didn't create it, you don't have a right to monopolize it just because you're more powerful. We need to have something like the Henry George idea of location value. Everything has a true cost pricing. And if you don't integrate those true cost pricings into your economic system, you're going to get these rapacious extractive behaviors that are destroying our commonwealth of the biosphere. We need to even have baseline longevity. I mean, there's I think it's Daniel Schmachtenberg that says the value of a whale in the ocean is zero. The value of a whale on the deck of a whaling ship being slaughtered is like $1 million. So what is wrong with our economics that we're not pricing things at their true costs? We're just saying, oh yeah, the market will figure it out. People will just like trade with each other. And no, that's not accounting for all these externalities. Like when we move off planet and become a Kardashev level 2 civilization, I'm an optimist. I think we'll achieve this. Tom may have different ideas, but that's where you're using the output of the local star. And funny thing about stars, if someone puts up a collector to collect the solar energy, guess what? The guy behind them is going to be in shadow and they're not going to have access to that energy. So what are we going to do? Are we going to have a war, start blowing up each other's collectors? No, we're going to have systems of rules-based order and due process and reciprocal accountability. And we're going to say, okay, we're going to have a location auction. You get the right to use this location for a certain amount of time. And we already do this with property, with real property. We have bundles of rights. You can get the surface rights. You can get the mineral rights. You can get leasing rights. There's easements. I mean, we already have a lot of the tools to create a commonwealth true cost pricing style of economics. So that's going to be a big part of what I'll be talking about in the coming months on the campaign, because I don't think it's being talked about, and it needs to be.
Thank you. Mr. Ben, I have very specific things because you know that we have some real-time projects, and when we organize this kind of dialogue, we always try that our audience learn something from our dialogue. Definitely, Transhumanist Party is very advanced political party, as far I know, and definitely we are advocating these things to our government, to our agency. We are developing one of the largest initiative. It's called Shift, Sheikh Hasina Institute of Frontier Technology. Just last week, uh, we make a law for the parliaments, and the parliament member they're going to approve these things because according to law, naturally, uh, the this kind of university never happened in Bangladesh. This is the first time, first initiative, and this university of this university actually based on our prime ministers, and we will discuss on the frontier technology. We want to invent more new technology for our community, for the global community. So what kind of technology will be important for doing research, or how this transhumanist party scientists can collaborate with us and bring some success for this kind of universities? Mr. Ben.
Um, I think that the global community does a pretty good job interacting. I guess one thought I'm having, Dr. Sharif, is that when I was starting to dig into the longevity science, late 2019, early 2020, I was a little surprised that it felt like the research that I was coming across was very in Europe, the U.S., maybe a little bit like in Singapore, and it made me think that there was like a disconnect between, call it the Western longevity research world, and the Eastern. I did come across a book that seemed like it was, I think it was written by an Indian author, and it felt like it, and there were papers within, and it seemed mostly Indian researchers there. So I am curious why that disconnect might be. I could see, like with China, maybe a political and language barrier going on. With India, I know I checked with, I don't need to be dropping names, I guess, but I checked with someone about, so there's a senolytic combination of dasatinib and quercetin that at this point, dasatinib is still a proprietary drug in the US, not a generic yet. But my impression is that it already is generic in India. So I was curious about reaching out to an Indian researcher about, well, start a dasatinib quercetin trial because it'd be a little cheaper. And the person I was talking to was like, it just takes a whole lot more considerations than just the drug cost to make a trial like this happen. So all to say, I will acknowledge that I feel that there is somewhat of a disconnect between the Eastern and the Western world. But I guess I also think there is a pretty good, at least longevity project going on in India. And I'd be curious about Bangladesh being able to tap into that. I really just can't speak to the rest of any of this, call it like Tesla or futuristic technology, though, I guess. So thanks for the opportunity to try to answer.
Cool. So
Thank you, Mr. Jason.
I could touch on a couple of things about Daniel was mentioning this. Longevity needs to be about the whole biosphere, and I agree. And this fact that we're losing, however many species every day or year, or however whatever it is, it's way too many. I'm not sure if people really understand what that is and what kind of loss that is, because even in the future, when we have the ability to say program genes and just literally create whatever creature we want, you still got to program that, and there's this quality about life itself that it's really, I mean, the mutations and the randomness of I could see being very hard to replicate, and so when we lose a species in the Amazon, there's a good chance we'll never get that back because we won't know how to, to make those. So it's a big loss, and as far as like how to save that, I heard one possible idea about buying pieces of rainforest, just so that way it keeps it from being cut down. I know Mike DeVerde is talking about how out there in Washington State, they got this little idea where they do that. They buy the chunk of forest, and then they like pay the farmer, or maybe that's it. They pay the farmer who owns it not to chop it all down and build a condo. You know, so that's maybe an idea. And this idea of what it's going to do to the economy is super interesting. That's why I asked earlier about like what would you guys do if you got another 300 years, because in the economy you got your people that are like 18 through 50 or 65 or whatever, where they're in their peak working time frame, and they're also in their peak consuming. There's this block of people that are consuming, and that's real important, because if you got all kinds of manufacturing jobs going on, you're making all this stuff, but if people aren't buying the stuff, then you got a problem with your economy. And it's the young people that are having babies, that are buying cars, that are buying houses, you know what I mean? And the thing that the old people have is capital, because they've already worked their whole life, and they got a whole bunch of capital. And when they retire at like say 65, they will take and liquidate some of their assets and put it into something that is different. And it takes capital out of the market. And so I see the point of the analogy about the swimming pool, and about how adult swim needs to end so that way the young people can get in the pool. I'm just not completely convinced that it'll be that way, because there'll be more consumers in the marketplace. There'll be more capital, from the old people not having to retire. And I just think it's a really up in the air question about what that's going to do. I wouldn't know how to even do a simulation on that, other than ask you guys, what would you do? I don't know, man. I'd probably have more kids, honestly. So, but what do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, no, I've put enough out into the world. I think 3 boys, but that's expensive too, to have children. But yeah, I think we're flying in a flock of black swans. We have no idea how all of this will play out, just like with AI, but we also have the ability to control our reality. The quantum field can be influenced by how we think about it, and what we perceive, and what we want to perceive. And we've forgotten that power. And so even when I talk about AI, even very smart AI developers fear AI may inadvertently program into it self-preservation algorithms, so it would become something to fear, because it will say, okay, this guy feels like he needs to preserve himself, so maybe I should do that too, and every entity mimics whatever it's imprinted on first for a while. We don't want AI to imprint to mimic us for too long. Maybe the better nature of our angels, or the nature of our better angels, or the better angels of our nature, whatever it is, that's what we hope that they will imprint on. But yeah, there's so many like, again, if I'm being honest, I mean, I didn't come into this movement to live longer. I don't necessarily want to live longer. That's not my goal. I've come from it from a Gnostic point of view, and my whole thing is to escape this matrix, is to escape this Gnostic simulation. And I believe the consciousness continues on after physical death. And so a lot of transhumanists don't believe this. A lot of transhumanists are atheists, but a lot of them are also, Mormons or Christian transhumanists. So there's a lot of reasons people identify as transhumanist. I guess I'm Gnostic transhumanists, and I want to use technology and AI to help me escape this matrix in a way. And so I think I do. I honestly believe that there's other realms to explore with my consciousness, that there's certain ways that we feel attached to this realm, whether it's our emotional attachments and things like that keep us wanting to keep coming back. And so I don't know. There's a lot at play here, and for me, I also think that the Gnostic demiurge as the villain is the gameplay I've chosen in this simulation. That's the gameplay I've chosen. I think relativity is a whole system phenomenon, and everybody's got their own game going on at the same time. And the interesting thing about this planet is that they're all together. And I think whoever the simulation writers are, or the architect is, are trying to see what happens when everybody comes in with their own relative game that they're playing and how that'll work out. So anyway, there's a lot to talk about. And for me, longevity is the point of this conversation. And so what I come to it as is wanting to prepare our society for what younger people will have to deal with if older people start living longer. You're right. I think that the species is taking care of it itself. There's a lower testosterone levels. Sperm counts are down like 50%, recently in the last, 10, 20 years or so. So something's happening with our biology that is either preparing us to live longer, or Gaia is saying, I've had enough. You guys are done. Whatever it is, there's an equilibrium that is happening, that we don't really have control over. And but also culturally, millennials don't necessarily want to get married right away, if at all. They want to have smaller families. They're waiting longer to have kids. There's a lot of things that are kind of working in the Earth's favor. Even 2020, even the whole pandemic seemed like I saw this documentary back from the 70s by the Club of Rome. A lot of conspiracies around them, but where they had this computer that was projecting all of these different variables, very classic 70s kind of computer type, but they had these variables of population and the quality of life and all these variables that and pollution that they put into it. And they said that by 2020 there would be a convergence to where it would be unsustainable anymore. But if you think about it, with the pandemic, with everybody staying inside, the pollution went away for a while, for a time. It really subsided for a long time, and so it felt like that who was ever in control back in the 70s and saw this happening, or what the simulation, it prepared us for 2020, and it gave us kind of a boost. It gave us a head start a little bit, because everything was supposed to converge by 2020, all the quality of life, all the pollution, all the population. And without that break in all of these factors, things could have gone really bad. I mean, there's a lot of ancillary issues that happen because of that staying indoors for so long. There's a lot of depression, a lot of isolation, a lot of things that went wrong with that experiment. But also a lot of things for the Earth went good. And so I don't know. It's like we're trying to understand what is happening anyway. I think the Earth, our species, finds its equilibrium. It can't help but find its equilibrium. That's what the whole organic universe is about, is finding that stasis. And we keep trying to tell a story about it, or we keep trying to control it. It's like you can't really control the economy. There's way too many factors. Nobody can really control the economy. It's a very amorphous kind of a liquid flowing thing. There's been a lot of people that have used different techniques to predict the market. I took the Series 7 course to be a stockbroker, which I was for about 15 minutes back in the day. And the instructor he used the theory of stars, and the lifespan of stars to make predictions in the stock market. So there's all different ways to apply our meaning to what is happening anyway. And that's what we do. That's what the human brain does. We're storytellers. We apply meaning to things. There's this great site called Inspirabot. I think it's Inspirabot, and it puts together just random phrases with random pictures, and sometimes they don't make any sense at all. Sometimes they're very poignant, and sometimes they're just hysterical. And I use that with clients, and I have them choose 3 random ones, and then I have them apply meaning to these things, because that's what we do. That's what our brain does. We immediately kind of apply meaning. We apply a story to a natural phenomenon, you know. And so that's a great. If you guys haven't seen it, you should check out Inspirabot. It's hilarious. It's like motivational posters that create some. Sometimes they're super crazy. And but yeah, that's what we do. We apply meaning to it. And at some point, you get with this Inspirabot, you get to a state where it's almost like you're talking to it. It seems like it's not random anymore. But that's also what we do. We create patterns. And if we don't see a pattern, we create a pattern. And that's how we evolved. That's where we can see a beige lion in a tan field of grass. That's how we survived, by being able to spot breaks and patterns. And it's over serving us, because now we're seeing patterns in people's motives, and they look like conspiracies. And so, but we're still working through that, and we probably won't get away from that. But I think it's important to understand that these systems, this equilibrium, the stasis of life, happens anyway. And it's better to put a positive story to it and to look at the good. There's so much good happening in the world, but the business model of media, social and corporate, is if it bleeds, it leads. So all we're seeing is like the rubbernecking. We want to look at the who died in the car accident. That's what gets our attention, and that's the business model. So if you look at the news every day, you think this world is going to hell, but there's so many good things happening. It's the best time to be alive as a human being in history. There's so much going on, but that doesn't get the attention. That doesn't allow them to increase engagement and then charge more for their advertising. So we need to be aware of these things, but also we need to be aware of, that the species is preparing for us to live longer. It seems to be in my case. It seems to be preparing us to live at least 20 years longer, if not more. And it's going to take probably stages, but it feels like, with the testosterone levels dropping, the sperm counts dropping, younger people wanting to have fewer children, if at all. It's like things are working out, one way or the other. And but really, the USCP is the only party, the political party, that is talking about these very serious issues and preparing them, or writing policy papers about how to handle these what used to be science fiction things, sentient rights, all of this stuff. Again, I say this often, but the Democrats and Republicans don't meet the minimum system requirements for what's coming, for the economic and the technological singularity. And so we need to talk about these things rationally, but we also have to keep an open and positive, optimistic mind about what's happening, and understand that we have the power to tell the right story, to tell a happy ending story about this. And there's a guy that wrote a book called There Is AI in Team. And he asked me to review it and write a blurb for the cover. And it's a very important book, because at the beginning of each chapter, he kind of gives you a scenario of what it will be like to work positively with AI. It's giving us kind of a predictive programming aspect of what it will be like in a positive way to be working with AI in the future. And that's what I pointed out in my blurb, is how important that is right now. Because right now, people are afraid of what they don't understand. And if they don't have a story to tell, they'll put a horror story on it in the meantime, because they'll see it as a threat. And so I think that's important that we talk about longevity in a positive way. We talk about all these issues that we need to take care of in a positive way, and tell the right story and not make people fearful. And I think that's Gennady talked about this last night in our meeting, is being affable, being, I forget the word he used, but the 5 A's, just being amicable, being positive about the future. And that's a very important thing that we need to do. And that's all I have to say about that.
Could I jump in because you brought up faith-based transhumanism, and I consider myself a faith-based transhumanist. I think, one of the books I read early on and was called "The Physics of Immortality." It was written by this very renowned scientist, Frank Tipler, and he started out an atheist. And after he did all this research on the resurrection of the dead and black hole physics, he became a faith-based kind of transhumanist. And like you said, Tom, a lot of people that are attracted to transhumanist or hyper-materialist, hyper-rationalist. But I say, if we're not here to take care of each other and divine the mysteries of creation and find union with the divine, what are we going to do? Just like buy stuff and sell each other gadgets if we live forever? I mean, no, we have to have a deeper purpose, that Christos, that anointing. And I know, Tom, you've got with your Gnostic beliefs, you think there are darker forces maybe masquerading as phony kind of divine entities, and I do think that's something that people need to test things. It's in, I think, Thessalonians: test everything and hold fast to that which is true. That's the scientific method, basically. And it's in the freaking Bible. And the first book of the Hebrew Bible, Genesis, teaches us we're products of this loving creator, and we're here to steward this creation and to choose life. And to me, I've got a friend who's a Christian. He's like, oh, you can't be a transhumanist Christian. That's, and so there is, the faith community is divided on this. But, there's Mormon transhumanists. We've had salons with Islamic transhumanists. We did a Gnostic transhumanist salon there. So, the title, this is Holy Grail. So want to put in a good word for, union with the divine. That's a big part of transhumanism.
Yeah. And again, the Gnostic is just the gameplay I've chosen. I think that once I'm gone, there won't be any judgment of any decisions. This is just a video game for me. But you get enthralled in it. You get immersed in it. And that's the gameplay I've chosen. That's my villain is the demiurge, and that can change. I've tried different gameplays, but that's my struggle is I know that after this, there won't be anything judging whatever choices I made, it'll just be me judging myself and how well I did. I'm playing against myself here, but yeah, I think it's important to choose a particular gameplay if you're on the right side of it. And it's hard to tell what side. A lot of people, they can't tell what side I'm on, because as a Gnostic, I think this whole system is evil, that's just the gameplay again. But so I come off as a villain. And even when I talk about, voluntary population control, people freak out, but it's out of love. I want to prepare the way for younger generations, so.
It's kind of ironic because the earliest Christians were Gnostics, and they died out because they didn't want to trap more souls in matter. So they didn't have a lot of kids. So they were kind of a self-extinguishing branch of transhumanism.
Kind of anti-natalist.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I could sometimes feel that way, but I've got 3 kids, so I can't really. I can be an anti-natalist by proxy, maybe, but yeah.
Great comments we've been getting, by the way, during the show.
Yeah,
lovely.
Funny point.
So I don't want to take up too much time.
I think I'm probably mostly in Tom's boat. Number one, I mean, I kind of started from the AI aspect. Like there's 3 main things in transhumanism: the AI and the longevity and the super happiness. And I would kind of maybe have a little message for the ones that are started from longevity. It's like they should have maybe a little bit of compassion for those that aren't like super into longevity, because it's like, death is a freaky thing. Okay. And so picture it like, you got a homeless guy that's broke, and you're saying to him, hey man, you might win $1 million next week. It might be $1 billion next week. Even if he believes you, he's not gonna, get his hopes up, especially after he's, got convinced that, it's never gonna happen, So if somebody that has been completely terrified of death for years and years and years, maybe from religion or whatever, terrified of going to hell. And then over 40 years, it's taken them, and they finally get, comfortable with the fact, and they're no longer, having waking up in cold sweats with nightmares, and then somebody comes along and says, hey, guess what? Longevity science is coming around the corner. It's not that they don't believe them, it's might be true, but, I'm not going to be super quick to just put all my eggs in there. I mean, it's more like okay, that sounds like a no-brainer, sounds cool, but, let's see when it happens, you know what I mean? Because, wishful thinking, I'd rather be comfortable and accepting than get my hopes all up and then be let down and have to go through the whole grieving process or whatever it was that got you to that point in the first place. I mean, it's freaky stuff.
Yeah.
And to end, I got one thing for all the transhumanists. When you see a transhumanist posting something, likes are free, hit like and stuff on their stuff. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You might see some of their posts more in your feed because of the algorithm. Well, if they're transhumanists, then they're probably posting cool stuff anyway that you want to see. So, it's
Actually, hit love. It helps the algorithm even more if you hit a love.
Yeah.
Those are free too. It doesn't cost any more than a like.
Yeah, I mean, engagement. It's all about engagement. And when I talk about how we shouldn't fear AI, that increases engagement because that's controversial, But it's a very soothing statement that no, don't. It's all cool. There's first principle arguments to be made that the smarter it gets, the kinder it becomes, and that's soothing to a lot of people because who are afraid. So it's a double-edged kind of sword of engagement that I'm finding with my message. And yeah, so the transhumanists, I've been saying that we should just say what we believe and be out and proud about it, whatever we believe, and whether we want to be, morphed into cyborgs or we, whatever it is we believe, we should take the time and say it proud because that will, we will find our people that way. There's a lot of people that are afraid to say or identify with transhumanism because of this dark agenda, because our narrative has gotten away from us, and so a big part of this campaign is it's a marketing campaign for transhumanism and the party, because again, our narrative has gotten away from us. Where people, they hear the word transhumanist and they think you are paving the way for the Antichrist or a robot overlord, which is cool. I mean, that's some people may want that, but no, it's more about explaining what we are and how many people identify it. They don't necessarily want to live longer. I was brought into this movement because I want to fight. I want to use AI to fight child exploitation. So there's so many reasons that people identify as transhumanists, and we need to make that point. And again, I always say that we're all transhumanists. We're all, if you use a phone, if you have glasses, if you wear a watch, whatever technology, if you wear clothing, that's technology. Without technology like clothing or shelter, we naked apes would be extinct within a generation or less. So we are all transhumanists because without technology, again, we would be extinct. We wouldn't be around. We would be one of those creatures in the Amazon that we'd have never even heard about, And so that's what this is about. It's about, when you put a marker on it, say I'm a transhumanist, that invites conflict, that invites contradiction and people arguing. But the truth is, transhumanism is all about owning our technology and identifying our technology, identifying with our technology, and just saying what we are. And without technology, we would not be around.
Hey, you think the movement
Thank
would be
you.
farther
Mr.
along
Ben,
if all
what's your
these
concluding
technology
remarks for
users
today?
had the edge? Sorry.
What's that?
Oh, I mean, you'd think our movement would be farther along if all these non-technology people had died off, right? But,
Yeah. Not a lot of news camps around
Yeah.
anymore.
Explain that one. Go ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Ben, what's your concluding remarks for today?
I think kind of feeding into Tom's line, I was kind of nervous about coming out as transhumanist when first joining the party, and then I think it was that the NIH was looking for a new director, and Dan Elton got me to help write our endorsement for. I'm sadly forgetting her name at this point, but she's she's very involved in the robots. Ugh, I'm sorry. Anyway, so after helping him write that, and then I put it on my feed on Facebook, I was like, all right, I guess I am fully declared now in my belief structure. But I've really enjoyed my life since then, since declaring what I believe and having what I believe up for debate with whoever would like to talk about what is the right way to look at this life that we have been blessed with. I guess I was happy after I did that I was still able to get a job in a very mainstream realm. I feel like sometimes that can be a big question mark when you're looking to not have anything that stands out about you other than that you're really qualified or something. So I guess I'll say that I'm really happy that I feel comfortable sharing what I believe, and I really hope that everybody could experience this comfort of sharing what they believe and to have it discussed through with whoever is willing to discuss it with them. I guess I'll conclude my last little point about, we were talking about faith-based, and I don't consider myself a religiously faith-based person, but I know that my belief in science and humanity does approach a faith that is beyond what the data would state conclusively, that we can achieve this beneficial for all future kind of thing. I just have a faith that we can do this together. The instruments that we have in place, we can figure out how to do this better than we do it now, and to keep working on it together. So thanks for sharing the stage with me today, everybody.
Cool.
Thank
I
you.
could just leave it with the
Yeah.
fact that you guys are right. It takes some courage, to identify as being transhumanist. Now, me personally, when I first ran across transhumanism, I didn't even think nothing about it. Honestly, I didn't think trans, freaky. No, I didn't bother me a bit. But I've heard a lot of some stuff. There's a lot of people that, they've told me, I love transhumanism, but I just can't, I can't say it. I can't put it, and so going back to my other point, it takes courage. So, you see some transhumanist stuff, smash the like button, help us out. That's it. Back to you, Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. What's your concluding remarks for today? Unmute, please.
Sorry. Yeah. This is breaking from our campaign series format, but it's important to talk about how important longevity is to the movement, to the party, and to Dan and I. And we need to discuss the longevity science, but we also need to prepare to live longer, so that young people can have a world where they want to live longer in. Again, I talked about how the suicide rate in America has increased dramatically, and those people don't want radical life extension; they want radical life subtraction. And we need to turn that around. We need to figure out that first, and while we're working on killing death. And so that's my concluding remark.
So Daniel, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Try not to die. It's good to be alive. we're the try not to die party.
Yeah.
Choose
Every
life.
day above ground is a good day.
There you go. And it's not just done in a lab. You can do it every day, every
Yes.
way,
Thank
better and
you.
better.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.